It's absolutely amazing and wonderful to be back in my hometown. I love Des Moines and have loved and experienced cities all across the country and have always felt incredibly proud that Des Moines stands very high in relation to those cities. I especially love neighborhood business centers as a component of cities, particularly when they are economically healthy, socially vibrant, and culturally diverse. This image is an amazing image. I love this image. It's New York City around the turn of the last century, and it shows all of the components that make up what we now call sustainable neighborhoods or sustainable urbanism. It shows the convergence of both capital and culture of a healthy and vital neighborhood. In terms of capital, it's showing us the economic aspects of an interactive and engaging neighborhood economy, and it's showing us the human resources, the human capital of a neighborhood. Those leaders and politicians and elders of the community, they're engaging with the residents of that community. It's the merchants and the mom and pop shops, that buying and selling of goods and services. And culturally, these were and still are the social centers of the community. The cafes, the coffee shops, the pubs and the streets are the living rooms, the kitchens, and the playgrounds of the neighborhood. They were also immigrant entry points for a number of different cultures as they came over to America. It was where they became integrated into American life. But it's also where they were able to share, celebrate, and pass on their ethnic heritage in terms of food, clothing, customs, and traditions to their families. It's where people learned about jobs and the news of the day, and where young people learned not only about their heritage, but how to socialize. The buildings created the spaces, both the internal spaces and the spaces of the urban environment, in effect, the character and the context of the neighborhood, and they formed the space, which we now call the place, that is our neighborhood, which contributes to forming the identities that are a part of our communities within our cities. It's really not that much different today, over 100 years later. And as cities throughout the United States have been rediscovering the value of this relationship between capital and culture, there's been an increased redevelopment of downtown business centers and those inner city neighborhoods and their business centers. It's resulted in more and more people living in urban areas. And in fact, as has been said earlier, in 2007, 1/2 of the world's population became officially urban. And 1/3 of Americans inhabit just 16 large metropolitan areas across the country. Collectively, this is only a tiny fraction of the country's landmass. Humans are social beings. We naturally seek connection to other people in public venues. And we do it in the cafes, the coffee shops, and in the pubs, as well as the streets and the public spaces as a part of our daily activities. So what are the modern day mom and pop stores? These are the day-to-day service, retail, and entertainment businesses, and they are still, and once again, the cafes, coffee houses, and pubs. They are the grocery stores and markets, hardware stores, and the pharmacies. They are the barbershops, butcher shops, and the bakeries. They are often family-owned and operated, and they are what we now call micro-business enterprises. They have 10 or fewer employees, although actually most of them are only 5 or fewer employees. And they are a distinct business category, effectively a subset of small business. 2009 data released in 2012 shows that 95.5% of all US firms are micro-businesses. They are the largest sector of the US economy. And their capital needs are really typically no more than about $50,000. And while approximately 50% of them are home-based, The other 50% need commercial retail space in order to operate. And many of those home-based businesses actually eventually transition into needing retail commercial space. But let's look more specifically at the structure of what a sustainable neighborhood and its business district looks like. The businesses are gathered at the center of the neighborhood. They're typically within about a quarter-mile radius or about a 5-minute walk of most of the residents of that neighborhood. And there are parks and other civic buildings, such as libraries, churches, civic municipal buildings that are located very near that business center. It's a higher density of housing that's closer to the business center, and then it radiates to lower and lower densities as it gets further and further away from that business center. And if it's truly healthy and vibrant, it has a frequent and reliable transit system that connects one neighborhood to another neighborhood, allowing people to live in one neighborhood and get to the jobs they need to get to in other neighborhoods. One neighborhood business center is a village or even a small rural town. But if you group enough of them together, you get a city. And that one larger one in the middle is the central business district. This model played out in the early planning of cities throughout the country and across the United States. In Boston, it looks like this. Boston is often called the city of neighborhoods, and each of those delineated areas is a neighborhood. Its central business district is actually down by the water, because those oceans and those rivers were actually the transportation system for early commerce. Our offices at HBI are located in a renovated fire station in Roxbury, which you see on the map. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple of projects that are located in both Hyde Park and Roslindale, neighborhoods that are a little further out from the central business district. In Des Moines, you all know it looks like this, or at least a portion of the map looks like this. But if you extended that map out a bit further, you would see neighborhoods such as Capitol East, Riverbend, Woodland Heights, the Ingersoll business area, which I lived in for a number of years, the Uptown Shopping Center, which I grew up in my early years, Beaverdale, and many, many others. Neighborhoods and their business districts exist like this all over the country. They're different in scale. Some are 1 story, some get to 3 stories, maybe even 5 stories in their building sizes. They have different architectural styles that have been influenced by different periods of time and different cultures that have come over to the country in different times of its life. And they are populated by different immigrant cultures. Early immigrant periods included the Chinese, the Italians, the Greeks, Portuguese, and many, many other ethnicities. Along with the rediscovery of urban business centers has been a rediscovery of the economic opportunity of ethnic heritage. Trends in immigration, along with the growth of international trade, transnationalism, globalization, and even tourism, has increased the demand for marketing that incorporates ethnicity and ethnic identity. Real estate developers have been capitalizing on this by redeveloping existing ethnic neighborhoods into destination tourist districts and developing new ethnic-oriented neighborhood developments. San Diego, for example, the top image on the upper right, has invested in the redevelopment of its historic Little Italy as a destination tourist location. Fruitvale near Oakland, California, which is the middle top row, is actually a new urbanist-style new development centered on the Hispanic Latino culture. It's both an active neighborhood development as well as a destination tourist location. This is now the collective face of the United States. The Pew Research Center has predicted that non-Hispanic whites will become a minority by the year 2050 in the lifetime of many of us here. And as recent immigrants to the country have retained their cultural identity, there's been a renewed identification with cultural heritage and ethnicity by those from previous immigration periods, and in particular those that are maybe 2nd and 3rd generation immigrants. This has resulted in increased demand for ethnic specialty products and merchandise. For example, it's estimated that the ethnic food market in North America is growing by an annual rate of about 5%. The US is now truly a nation of multicultural ethnicities, and the retail business market is responding. In particular, by recent ethnic entrepreneurs. Iowa understands this. Iowa is one of the states with the fastest growing number of Hispanic businesses. Trends in ethnic retailing and ethnic entrepreneurialism, along with the magnitude of micro-business enterprises, coupled with the discovery of the heritage of historic neighborhood business centers, means economic opportunity for redeveloping historic buildings. The preservation of buildings, therefore, is an economic development tool and a form of applying or reapplying cultural heritage in the regeneration of neighborhoods and their business districts. This is much more than saving a particular building as an artifact or as a set piece. It's about celebrating cultural heritage and creating the actual storefront spaces that are needed for those micro-business enterprises. This image is Hyde Park neighborhood of Boston. HBI owns the building that you see in the center at the end of this street. It's a typical building, many that are in business centers across the country. It's a simple, almost generic building. Happens to be an example of French mansard vernacular of the late 1800s. HBI bought it from the daughter of the Italian immigrant cobbler who lived here with his family and raised his family in this building, and he had a shop on the main level. It is truly a mom and pop store example. And the daughter still lives there today. She's in her late 80s. By leveraging state and historic tax credits along with city grants, we will be renovating the storefront of the new neighborhood into an opportunity for new neighborhood-oriented micro-businesses. The Rosendale neighborhood was historically a Portuguese immigrant neighborhood with a tradition of fine bakeries. The community has branded itself, therefore, a fine food district in modern times, and it's therefore a modern culinary district. It has wine shops, cheese shops, specialty food stores, and local celebrity-owned restaurants. Its farmers market is located in the park that's right in the center of the business district. And it's highly popular, strongly supported, attracts people from throughout the greater Boston area. Just to the right in this image, you see a corner of a brick building. It's an outdated streetcar electrical substation building. Its use was eliminated decades ago, so the building has essentially been abandoned, but it's right in the middle of their historic district. HBI partnered with the Roslindale Village Main Street organization to repurpose the building into what will be an upscale restaurant and specialty food market. And it will partner with that local farmer's market to purchase the produce for use throughout the week. In the historic Chinatown neighborhood of Boston, HBI owns the last remaining example of commercial architecture designed by the architect H.H. Richardson. It was literally saved from the wrecking ball. The exterior was restored in the 1990s, and the first floor became a small neighborhood branch bank. We are now in the process of using historic tax credits to repurpose the upper floors into loft-type apartments at a price point of about $3.50 per square foot. So the developers in the crowd can start calculating what that means. It's about 1,000 square feet. Oh, I did get a laugh in. Very good. All right. What's interesting, though, is that there are over 200 apartments being developed within about a 4-block area of historic Chinatown, all at about that same price point, which, when you do the calculation, is somewhere between $3,700 to maybe up to $4,500 for monthly rent on an apartment. Imagine that. So historic Chinatown is becoming the new hot place to live in Boston. But there is much, much more work still to be done in the neighborhoods and cities across this country. Many inner-city business centers are still blighted with vacant buildings, vacant sites, and vacant storefronts. These are untapped opportunities to reinvest in neighborhoods, strengthen local economies and communities, and celebrate our collective American cultural heritage. Inner city urban business centers are, once again, a new frontier for City 2.0. Thank you.